what is supposed to be completely out of the realm of do-it-yourselfer. There's a guy that's showing that, yep, I rebuilt one in my backyard. I had a basic tool set.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting, thought-provoking episode of the Jaded Mechanic Podcast. My name's Jeff, and I'd like to thank you for joining me on this journey of reflection and insight into the toils and triumphs of a career in automotive repair. After more than 20 years of skin knuckles and tool debt, I want to share my perspectives and hear other people's thoughts about our industry. So pour yourself a strong coffee or grab a cold Canadian beer and get ready for some great conversation.
With me tonight is a really good friend of mine, Oscar Gomez. Oscar, say hello to the people.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Yeah. So, how was your day, Oscar?
So far, so good, Jeff. I'm actually kind of running a little bit late. I just finished up a quick little meeting here with Launch, which I had no idea was literally 5 miles from our campus. And these guys were showing me some of their new EV tools. And their ADOS equipment, which I thought was pretty awesome. And they actually even offered us to have like a field trip. So we're going to be taking a class with us next week, and they're going to demo the whole ADOS unit and run them through some ADOS calibrations. So it's been a really productive morning. And then I have class in a few hours, so I'm pretty excited for today, man. How about yourself?
Very good. So for the people that maybe not familiar, Oscar, give us where you are and what you do.
My biggest thing is I'm on a mission to better the automotive industry one technician at a time. And that starts with anybody who's willing to take the time to sit down and listen to me. Sometimes I do say some dumb stuff, trying to be funny, but most of the time I'm sharing some good information and trying to help people out. I'm located in the southern part of California, in Southern California, here in the city of Rancho Cucamonga. We're only about 35 miles east of Los Angeles. However, knowing that this is California, that equates to about an hour and a half in traffic. So we're not too far from the LA basin. And I've actually been training since professionally since 2011 when I got licensed as an instructor here in the state of California. And it was more of just one of those things that I was doing as a side hustle. I don't want to call it a side hustle, but more of a, a little side gig that I was doing because I was still working at the time as an active technician. When I had that one moment that just changed my whole trajectory is when that's when I developed my why and my mission. After that, man, it's been an amazing ride.
It's an inspiring story, honestly, because I mean, like, you and I don't know each other real super well. You didn't make AST. You got kind of right. You got sidetracked with the hurricanes, and you were one of the guys that I was looking forward to meeting you because I'd only got to know you shortly before that. Just seeing your videos online and whatnot, and I'm like, oh, okay. So because I'm a nerd like that, right? Anybody that's got any kind of training online, YouTube or whatever, and it's free, I'll look it up and give it a follow. And
right, absolutely.
I liked your process right away because we have some really smart guys that come on this show, and I'm not one of them.
That makes two of us, man.
I can navigate the stuff. I know what people are doing, but it's not like I'm not at that level, right? So I mean, anything that comes across where it's like very well executed, the presentation of it, I really get off on that. I enjoy it. So so give us about the company.
The whole scoop on who we are. When I was working as an automotive technician and before I even decided to open a school, my wife and I had a conversation and she mentioned, you're teaching now. What about opening a school? And within about a week or so, her and I came up with a name called Master Automotive Training. And we said that the reason why we wanted to use that is because we can have an acronym of MAT.
Yes.
This was roughly, I want to say about 2010. And then throughout the process, after getting licensed as an instructor, the school that I was teaching at, it actually had to close down. And when that happened, I come home, tell my wife, hey, well, that's it. And she says, well, why don't you open a school? I still remember that day because I laughed pretty heavily, thinking that, how am I going to go from being a technician to now owning a school? And I started kind of doing my homework. After a couple of failed attempts, 18 months later, I was finally able to open as a training facility here in the state of California. I rented out the back of a smog check station, or an emission station, here in California,
Mhm.
and I was paying $100,000 to operate there. And so being California, it's not bad, and that's where it all got started. January of 2014 is when we ran our first class. I was jaw dropped that I was able to do my first class with, I believe, 12 to 15 students was my first run. And because I was doing it at that time, I was doing it more kind of like a little side gig.
Mhm.
And finally, when I had that one student who took the knowledge that I was able to give to him and pass his ASE L1, is what really triggered me to start wanting to do something better. And that's when really we started focusing on going after the technical side, helping these guys with the technical aspect of training. And then started doing the YouTube process, doing some YouTube videos here and there, and that really took off. And that's really what has helped Master Automotive Training become a good name here in Southern California for automotive training.
That's awesome, Oscar. So tell me how you got your start, right? So before the teaching gig, you were working tech, right?
Yeah,
You're in the shop just like all of us. You're doing smog check, you're doing diag, you're doing, anything and everything, I think, right? Tell
right.
me, like, give me what made you want to do that? Were you a gearhead as a kid? Do you have family that did it? Like, that's what always fascinates me, is how this industry draws so many people. There's lots of second generation mechanics in there, but then there's lots of people that have never touched a car other than to drive the car, and they just go
Right.
into the industry. Tell us what young Oscar was like.
So the funny part, man, is young Oscar wanted nothing to do with cars. My parents actually opened up a carburetor shop back in 1991 in here in Rialto, California. So we were actually brought up within the shop more of a forceful type deal. Not that we really wanted to; it was you had to be at the shop.
Yeah.
So growing up through that process, I didn't really want to do that because it was forced on me. And then, my parents were lucky enough, they were able to expand to a second location. And I moved to that second location with their lead tech from that first shop. And that's where I really started to I transitioned from not liking it to wanting to learn more. I was doing more stuff. I was learning how to do brakes, how to do tune-ups, not just carburetor overhauls and adjustments. It was more of drivability diagnostics. Then we added the smog check to the shop. And during that process, I talk about Benjamin Franco was one of my first mentors, where he started teaching me more of the maintenance side. Like, hey, let me help show you how to use a lift. We would lift the car up. All right, we're going to do this oil change. And car would come in. He's like, hey, check engine lights on. We're going to go through this process, this and that. And that's where I started really liking it a lot more.
Yeah. So you kind of evolved past the technology of just a carburetor into EFI, right? Like, I mean,
Yep.
yeah. So,
Yeah. So I went from old school carburation to, CPI, central port injection, the old Spider, TBI. I got to work on distributor type, non-distributor DIS. So I share this with everybody because this really I feel was attributing to my knowledge base, because I was able to transition from mechanical to mechanical electrical to full electronic ignition and fuel systems as well. So I was able to see that whole transition,
yeah.
which really a lot of that rolled over, but then just became a little bit more advanced.
Mhm.
So I attribute that a lot to what I've been able to learn throughout my career.
It's a good way to get your fundamentals in, eh? If you can see that whole evolution from a set of points and to all the way up to what we're dealing with now, right? Like
Right.
I mean, it's still power and ground and current flow and all that jazz. But I mean, if you can break it down into its most basic system that you can hold up in your hand and show it to somebody and go, see, we used to go from this to this. That's
Right.
really effective, right? That's so. I'm I I'm old enough that I drove something with a distributor, right? And we had, well, up until in the '90s we still had a '65 Malibu, so I was
Oh,
familiar.
wow.
Yeah, I was familiar with points and carbs and stuff like that. So I mean, it wasn't totally foreign to me, but that's what got me hooked. Was like, oh, I don't want to work. My father was a collision auto body guy, and so I grew up around it, and I hated sanding, I hated welding, I hated cleaning the shop. It was just,
Yep. Yep.
I wanted
Yep.
everything to go fast, right? And he warned me, this is a tough. It looks like it's a lot of fun, but it's a slog, and
Right.
he was right. But I mean, I'm still thankful every day that I grew up around it, right? Because it's definitely what I was put here to do, for sure,
Exactly.
100%, so.
And going through those processes, a lot of times it is difficult, especially because there are parents. We would get different treatment than everybody else. Now I look at it and it's like, hey, well, I guess I could call it lucky that, even though it was something I didn't like, and the little bit that I was taught throughout that time has really helped me out a lot. So, to the listeners out there, if somebody's telling you something and it's bugging you, or you feel that they're attacking you, they're not. They're trying to help you. And if you listen to that individual, that's going to help you become a better person, which is going to just, the snowball effect, just keep rolling and compounding into something better, 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 better. So
Yeah, if they
don't
see
take it
potential,
as words. Yeah,
if they see potential in you, that's why they're pushing you, right? It's not
exactly.
it's not malice intent. It's because if they see that little glimmer of hope or something, or I hate to the natural aptitude thing is, I think that's been overdone. But when we see a potential in a person, either it's their work ethic or just something clicks, you want to see that develop, right? And I mean,
Yeah,
that's worth more than money sometimes, is to see that person. Like what I talk about in episodes, when I have a light bulb moment with some of the apprentices that I've had, or techs I've mentored, or even not even mentoring, just fellow techs that I can show them something. When you see that
yeah,
light bulb go off, that's the highlight of that week normally, right? Is that kind of,
yeah.
it doesn't matter what is kicking your tail. You feel like, okay, so I came in on the other side, and like that job really ate my lunch. But what was cool was John learned this, right? And I mean,
Yep.
and that makes it worthwhile. So yeah,
Absolutely.
and it
Absolutely.
gets addicting, doesn't it, Oscar?
Oh yeah, man. I get such a sometimes I'll get the chills, man, just talking about it, where you see that, I call it the aha moments, like you said, the light bulb moment, and it's when you see that student's face just go like, because what were instilling in them finally clicked, and once it clicked, man, they're done solid. So I live for that now. I love that, and that's why I love what I do as an educator.
That's fantastic, man. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you've been doing this, what do you say, 2014? Was that when you
So
started?
yeah, that's when we opened the school MAT, Master Automotive Training, in 2014. And then in 2019 we transitioned here to Rancho Cucamonga, and this has been our home base since 2019. We were just trying to build here in this area when COVID hit, and it was a little tough time. However, like you said earlier, it's seeing what's on the other side. Just like with electrical, we ran into a little bit of unwanted resistance, slowed us down a little bit. But then once we cleared that resistance up, we got our current flow going exceptionally. So as a school, we saw a lot of growth coming out of the shutdown. A lot is because of our hands-on approach, and
Mhm.
we make sure that anybody who comes in, yeah, anybody could read a book, anybody could watch a video, but you're going to do it here. So that's one of the major differences that we do, is we make sure that hands on the whole way.
Yeah, cool. So when you were talking about, you were working in the shop, you had that mentor. What kind of shop was that? Was that like the family shop, or is that or did you progress to a different shop after that? Like, give us kind of, did you hear us talk about different shop environments and different is it always been, have you always been an indie all makes models kind of person, or did you get a stint at a dealership at all, or?
No, I've always been independent. So at that shop that I was at, my family-owned shop, we were an emissions repair station, certification station, a brake and lamp center here in the state of California, and then we were also a general auto repair and maintenance and tires. So we pretty much did a little bit of everything. And when I turned 18, my existing mentor, which was Ben, he told me, "Hey, go get your smog license." And then that's when I attended a school in the city of Colton, which became the school that I actually started teaching at. That's where I went and I took my only formal education, which was at that point was an alternative to A6, ASE, A8, and L1, and then two state required classes, and that would qualify us to take the actual state exam.
Mhm.
So once I took the test, I passed it, got my license, and then now at the shop they were allowing me to do smog check inspections because I had the license. They were allowing me to start doing some of the electrical work. We had the Snap-on Modus and the Vantage at the time, so we were using that for testing. So that's where I started really getting a lot of my application of what I learned in school, because we had pretty much the equipment we needed and the available equipment at the time to actually do a lot of the diag work. And progressively, within about 6 or 7 months, we were kicking some, for lack of a better term, kicking some ass when it came to diag. So shop was doing pretty good at that time.
That's good, man. That's good. I mean, and that's the thing. It's, I grew up reading about how California was like the hotbed, right, of so much of the industry. In terms of cars can stay alive a little longer, I think, right, just because of
Yeah,
the climate. So I mean, you get a lot of exposure to, like you were saying, if somebody's working on a carburetor that's driving around one, it's going to be in some of those warmer, sunnier climates, right? And I mean, up
yeah,
here, that stuff's all rotted away. So other than if it's like somebody's resto project, we don't see it. But I mean, I can
right,
remember in Hot Rod magazine that was like in the 90s, and people's dailies were still like early 70s, right? You're still seeing
yeah,
that old technology. So I mean, it's sometimes I I'm gonna make a bucket trip at one point to LA just to see it.
yeah,
Um,
man.
but I mean, it's I think that'd be super cool. But it's that old technology is what got so many of us hooked
Yeah,
on the industry and all that kind of stuff. And I do think we're blessed to have had it.
yeah,
Because there's going to come a time where nobody's going to even know what a carburetor is. It's not even
right,
about it, right? So it's like we talk about it, and yeah, there's some young people that like, but if they kind of mess around with an older motorcycle or a dirt bike or something like that, that technology is still there, so it's still
right,
relevant. So I'm on the fence when we talk about should we teach it to kids or students, young people getting into the industry, and you just like, well, no, you want to throw them all the way into like nothing older than 96. But I mean, really, that fundamental stuff, there's still a lot of stuff running around out there that has points and a carb on it. And I think it's important that we still teach it so that they're not at the mercy of their side by side or their four
right.
wheeler repair center. They can take it apart, fix it themselves. It's an important thing, I think. So,
Definitely.
and it's sometimes that just puts the fun back in the job. You know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah.
to run something fun can really be good for the soul. So
Yeah,
uh,
definitely. One thing we do is we kind of touch on it, but towards the end. So first we
mhm,
get them accustomed to, inputs, outputs, and then once they understand that, then like, okay, so before we had that, we had carburetors.
yeah,
So we touch a little bit on it. During ignition, we do touch on distributor type ignition system. We have
mhm,
a 91 Corolla as one of our lab cars, so we're able to show them the whole setup. We do the primary connection to the coil, and then we'll go plug wire by plug wire, get a scope capture. So we teach them that. This one's also MPI, so we teach them how you'll see two injectors firing at the same time. So it has a lot of fun with that one, and then we have our newer one, and then we just bought a hybrid that we just started throwing at them as a curveball now.
wow, yeah, yeah. It's my boss just bought a 2023 hybrid Rav4, so I haven't had a chance to drive it
Ooh.
yet. But I mean, it's pretty slick looking. it goes. He's got that, and he's got a Tesla Model Y. So I mean, it's
Ooh,
a
nice.
yeah, that's an impressive car to drive. So yeah, it's a
Yeah,
amazing piece of machinery. Honestly,
it definitely is. Definitely is. We just added. Well, actually, they're doing the wiring right now for a level 2 charger
Mm.
that Chad from Top Don sent us over. So we're getting that wired up right now, so we could start working on some EV stuff.
Yeah, it's it's uh it still intimidates me when I think about it, right? Because it's so and I'm not, I'll be honest, I'm not completely 100% behind the whole idea that the grid will support everybody, operating one. I think, and that's, if we start to talk about that, are we going to price ourselves into 10% of the people are only going to be able to afford a car, right? Or are going to be able to
Right.
use a car, and the rest of us, that's a scary thing. And it, when we think about how much North Americans culture relies on the automobile and is built on the automobile, that's
Yep.
a daunting possible for our future. So I don't every EV, I don't embrace it and just, oh yeah, it's, the technology is amazing, the performance is incredible, but it's just, when I think about, like, if, for instance, if you watch that guy Rich Rebuilds that does on YouTube, that takes the Teslas and whatnot that have been written off and salvage titles and rebuilds them, right? He runs a shop that does all that, and then he gets
Okay.
some doing, fascinating guy. He started out buying a Tesla that had been salvaged and wanting to fix it up, and then he ran into the whole roadblock of how it used to be. Tesla wouldn't sell you parts, wouldn't give you anything, right? So he's been one of the, at the forefront in the social media aspect of showing everybody the beautiful parts of Tesla and EV, and then
Okay.
the hoops sometimes you got to jump through to navigate it. So I mean, it's, yeah, I'm not an expert on the company by any stretch, or EV at all, but it's just interesting to see how what is supposed to be completely out of the realm of do-it-yourselfer. There's a guy that's showing that, yep, I rebuilt one in my backyard. I had a basic tool set, and he had a better than average understanding. He's an engineer, I think, by trade, but
Okay.
he didn't have all these fancy tools and everything. He just was like, how does it work? And he took it apart and fixed it.
Oh, shit.
So, I mean, good for him, right? Like, it's,
Yeah.
I like that resiliency of saying, okay, I want to know how, um,
Exactly.
it's, yeah, it fascinating what it can do. But for instance, my boss is like, I live, so 200 kilometers from me is Toronto, right?
Okay.
Pretty much the biggest city in Canada. And then 200 kilometers in the other direction is Ottawa, which is our nation's capital, Canada's capital. He cannot drive to Toronto without having to pull over and charge his Tesla. So it does not have the range that, yeah. So,
Ouch.
yeah, I mean, now, if you keep it at 105 kilometers, which is 61 miles an hour or something like that, around 60,
Okay.
it's certainly, but I mean, we don't drive like that up here. We do
No,
not.
not even here.
Yeah,
You'll
we
get ran over.
yeah, we don't drive 55 at all here. It's we drive fast, so it's the range is not there. That's why he went and got the hybrid RAV4, is because the Tesla's fine for his commute to work. He's 5 minutes from the shop where we work, and then everything else around town. But if he has to do any business travel, it was just getting to be a headache to try and find a charger for it, and
Yeah.
add it into your day. So he drove from here to Florida for a conference, and normally you can make that trip in about 20 hours, and he had to add another day and a half to his trip just when he took the Tesla. So
Wow.
that kind of was like, okay, like, he enjoyed the fact that he's not paying gas,
Right.
but it does add a substantial amount of your time. So
Then you also run the risk of that fast charger not working and all
yes,
that fun stuff,
yeah.
right?
So what
Dang.
so give us a day to day. How many students do you interact with in a day? How many classes? Like,
So for me personally, the way I run my classes, I try to do it not quick. We'd get it done quickly, but so my students come 4 times a week, and they're here Monday through Thursday from 6:30 to 10:30. And then they're here for a total of 7 weeks, so that's about 112 hours or so that they're with me. Um, my Spanish instructor actually has 5 separate classes that he does throughout the week. And so he gets to see roughly about 60 different students throughout the entire week. I myself get to see anywhere between 12 to 30 students, depending on what class we're actually teaching at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting because I get to see a lot of different sides of the industry. Uh, when I get kids that kind of remind me of myself, that they come in and they're like, "Yeah, my dad's making me come." So I'll sit down and talk to them. It's like, "Are you trying to? Are you just doing this because your dad's sending you?" And they're like, "Yeah, I'm not really into this car stuff, but my dad wants me to come, so I'm just doing him a solid." Most of the time, what we do is we'll sit down with them, like, "Look, man, money is always refundable, but your time's not. If this is not something you really want to do, you really need to talk to your parents and find something you want to." And then a lot of times when we talk to them that way, they'll come back and like a total reset. Well, we'll see them come in and actually want to start picking some stuff up. And then once that happens and they get their little aha or their light bulb moment, when that really happens, these guys are like, "What's my next class? What's the next thing I could take? How do I use this? How do I use that? Hey, today at the shop, me and my dad ran into this problem." So a lot of times it comes to that no communication, as
Mm-hmm.
a son or a daughter, but that I feel that us as instructors, that's one of our jobs as well, is to not motivate these kids, but more of inspire them and guide them. Because a lot of times, that people get sent to the automotive industry because they say, "Oh, well, you can't, you suck at this, you suck at that, you can't be this,"
Yeah.
and they're here, go work on cars. But if we start really being mentors to these kids and I mean, I say kids, but sometimes I have students that are in their 30s that are still not sure what they want to do. And my job is to guide them, is like, if this is really a fit for you, let's work on this. If this is not a fit for you, then I suggest we move you to either this class or a different career path in its total. And that has really helped out, I feel, a lot, because that's when I start seeing students that will say, "You know what, you got a point," and then they'll transition more to the mechanical aspect. Or I've seen some of these guys where they start liking more of the electrical stuff, so they start drifting into more electrical. Every so often, I'll have one, two, three students come back with passing ASEs. I got to write them a check for that, so I make them that promise as well.
That's
So
awesome. That's
being
awesome.
able to see a different, we see all range of guys coming through here, new guys. I have a veteran techs. One student that comes to my mind right now was in my diagnostic class last year. And here in California, we're required every 5 years to either have A6, L1 ASE, or take an alternative class. So I was teaching the alternative class, and he sat through it. By the end of the class, he had recertified A6A L1, even though he said he would never do it again because he never saw like a value to it. And at the end of the class, he had already redone all three because he said that we inspired and motivated him to do it again.
Yeah, because
So
that's an interesting subject, right? When we talk about that in the forums and the groups and whatever, and pose that, I posed it in the Changing the Industry, I think, a couple weeks ago, about ASEs or SAEs, sorry, and is it really, if you're going to hire the exact same person to a clone of the next person comes in and they're going to drop identical resumes, identical work experience, right? The only difference is one has certifications and the other one doesn't. Which one are you going to hire? Well, it was a
right.
resounding, I'm going to hire the one with the certs, because it says that they took pride in it and they took some initiative to actually take the test and everything else. Because Oscar, I'm sure you've seen it, you've heard it a million times probably, right? I don't need that certification.
Yeah.
I fixed the car without it. Like, tell us, you obviously, I know how you think, and that there are people out there that fix it without it. But it's
Right.
certainly right. It is to their advantage to have them. Yes.
Absolutely. I know a couple dealerships that I've done training for out here in SoCal that actually pay you. The highest I saw was $1.50 per ASE.
Mm.
So hey, you get ASE master. That's already like $10 on top of your normal pay just for having them. Then most of them are paying you your time for taking the test, and then they reimburse you the test. So I see it as advantageous to actually do it. What the way I look at my ASEs, it's not that it makes me better. It's not that it makes me worse. I use my ASEs as a grade scale
Hmm.
of my own personal education and knowledge. So basically, if I take an ASE, once I get my result, whether I passed or failed, I always analyze them and look at what areas am I weak in.
Hmm.
And then this helps me determine my weaknesses where I can then study up, research more, get some training in those areas. And then I use that as a guide to help me become better. Instead of using it as a bragging right, because honestly it's not,
Yeah.
it's just a piece of paper. You can have a degree and still be a dumbass, but it really doesn't mean anything. But I just use it as a way to kind of grade myself on where I am with my level of knowledge and experience.
That's an excellent attitude. I mean, up here in Canada, we don't really recognize it at all. Like, I mean, it's not, if you were to go around and say, who has one? I only know of one chain store, Canadian Tire, which is our biggest player in the aftermarket. That that does any kind of advertising to say that they do it, and they try to motivate their techs to get it. But up here, it's not. Up here, we have that, like we have our apprenticeship program, and then you actually get a trade license for doing it, right? And it takes like several thousand hours of on the job and in class, and you write tests. And for what I can't tell you the exact when they say, oh well, if you, like for instance, my code is 310S. That means 310S is service technician automotive. 310
Okay.
is the designation. Uh, Somebody said if you have that, you're ASE master certified. Like I should be able to take that. And they said if you were to go down to the States and try and get a job, and you told people, this is what they told us years ago anyway. How accurate it is,
Okay.
I don't know. They would say if you went to the States and said, well, I'm 310S, what we used to call a red seal, you'd immediately,
Yeah, I heard of that.
yeah, you'd get hired. So now we don't call it red seal because it's kind of, they still use a red seal, but they went and changed it about 5 or 6 years ago, rechanged
Okay.
some of the designations, split it up a bit and whatnot. So it used to be because you could be licensed, but in order to have a red seal, you had to score above a certain percentage. And then that meant that your license wasn't just okay in the province that you worked. You could, if you moved out of province, similar idea to moving to
Interesting.
another state, it was still recognized. So,
Okay.
which you guys are great because yours is recognized every state, right?
Right.
Here it's a you know it's a provincial thing. I can't. I mean, I've seen people in the industry that have never got that certification up here, and I can't say that when I've worked with them that they were competent, but there is something to be said that if you take the initiative to get the exams done, get your certification, it is a next level of when you're looking to hire
Yep.
somebody for sure, that you can say, okay, for sure they've had at least this many hours of in classroom training. They've had at least this many hours on the shop floor where they've been mentored, and somebody has been watching what they've been doing. Um,
Right.
Without that, it could be the wild, wild west, like, I mean, and I don't want to run down people that don't have certification. I just think that as the technology is moving, I think, Oscar, it's going to become even more important. That
Absolutely.
just going to be the way it has to go. I think.
Oh yeah. I mean, I see it just with safety concern. I mean, we don't even have to look into hybrids. There's plenty of things on a car right now that can hurt you. You don't know how to properly disable SRS. You're taking off a steering wheel for a clock spring. That thing deploys in your face. It could kill you. So it's definitely one of those things where people really need to be on their A game when it comes to training.
Yeah.
And I don't know about up in Canada, but I know here in California, training is like frowned upon. It's weird where people look at you like, why are you wasting your time going to training? I've been doing this for 40 years. Like, yeah, bro, you've been doing brakes and suspension for 40 years. Why are you talking down because I'm trying to learn electrical?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's crazy.
You wouldn't think that that would be, well, I mean, we know it still happens, but Oscar, what do you think is going to be, if you were to take the certification out of it, how do you motivate the younger people to go past the basic nuts and bolts and into the diag and into the electrical and into the EV? How do you motivate them to do it? Just with money?
I don't even think money's a factor now.
Really? Huh?
I've actually asked a lot of these guys, like, about money, and they're not really looking at the money anymore. They're looking at more of what's my environment going to be wherever I'm going to be working at.
Mm-hmm.
I think that has a bigger value to them now than the money,
Right.
because I think in their mind they're thinking higher higher pay means I'm going to be treated worse. So they'd much rather have that good work environment
Mm-hmm.
and have an average or okay salary versus a top paying job but being treated like crap.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
And go ahead.
when we talk, it's always the same thing. It comes back to, well, I can produce a lot of hours doing this. I can make the shop a lot of money doing, brakes and front end and tires and stuff like that,
Right.
right? But I always looked at it as like, I can find guys that can do that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say it's easy, because nothing in this industry anymore is easy to learn or easy to do or easy to find somebody. We're such a shortage. But
Right.
I always told everybody I worked with and mentored under me, try to make yourself, get into that stuff that other people struggle with, or get into those subjects that people shy away from. Make yourself, because we're always told if you're a mechanic, you'll always have a job. Sure, that's true. That is 100% true. I have never been out of work unless I chose to be out of work. But I always try to tell the young people, make yourself as indispensable as you can, right? Make yourself,
Wow. Yep.
you have that skill set that is 1 in 10 have, not, 8 out of 10 have,
Right.
Because if you have that skill set, you can do what the other 8 out of 10 do. But if you have
Exactly.
that one, and they've only going to hire one person, and you can fill that role, it helps you. It's not even about the money. It's just a situation of being able to say, like, it opens up more opportunities. I feel, if you're strong at electrical, you're strong at drivability, you're strong at diagnostics, there's a lot of guys that can, do a brake job in somebody's driveway for them. But if you that car is towed into you, and it's been to, we hear about the problem cars and the nightmare cars and all the different topics going on. How do we charge for this? And if you're just one of those shops that is known to fix the car, you get all the other work that comes with that, right? If the customers only want to go to one shop, really, they really do. If you can handle it all, take my money. Here's my keys. Call me when it's done. It's that trust factor. If you can get them coming into the door because you're known to be able to solve the problems, you're going to get all the other work too. And I think that's how we entice at the technician level, we entice them to that. You may see people move in and out of shops and, they don't have ASE certification, or they don't tackle the diag work. But if you can get some of that under your belt, you're going to have struggles. It's a different skill set. It's a different mindset, but you can navigate this industry, I think, with a few more opportunities because of that advanced training, right? So
Absolutely.
Attitude.
I'm right there with you on that one.
Yeah.
What I tell my students is find a specialty. And I talk a lot about specialty training and knowledge because of that. And, when I start my diagnostic class, I always tell my students is, you have mechanics and technicians. And I'm not talking down on mechanics because we need them. I don't do mechanical work. I know how, but I'm too expensive to do ball joints and brakes. Right.
Yep.
So what I tell my students is, if you want to be a mechanic, that's great, but this is not the class for you, because we're going to go through the technical side, and that's going to make you more valuable, and you're going to have to work less.
Mm-hmm.
And well, that's when a lot of these guys really start wanting to do the electrical, the engine performance. And for me, anytime somebody asks me what I do, my specialties are drivability, electrical, and emissions. If it falls into any of those three, I got you 100%. If it falls out of it, I could still do it, but would you want to pay me to do that?
Yeah.
Right. And like, exactly like you said, if we can inspire these guys to find that specialty within this whole crazy trade we have, they're going to excel. And like you said, you have that one open spot, they'll pick them over somebody else because of their ability to diag,
Mm-hmm.
their ability to do an emission repair, their ability to find those crazy electrical problems and repair them. So that I do believe the same, that finding that one specialty within everything we do will definitely make you stand out, and obviously your value increases, and you should be compensated for that.
Yeah, I think that's important, right? And that's it. It's just like you said. Um, it's not always about the money. I have seen some guys. I've worked with them. I might have been one of them at once or twice that had, a skill set that the others didn't have, and I don't want to say that I got away with some things that maybe they wouldn't have, right? But I mean, I could have a grumpy day and people just left me alone because they're like, okay, well, we need that guy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
it's like, if you're just the guy over there that's forever, chained to the tire machine or chained to the, alignment rack, and you come in and have a grouchy day, they might go, to heck with you. I got a resume on the desk right now of another guy that I can, replace you.
Yep.
Whereas that guy over there that solves the problems, we got to just got to let him have his day.
Give him his space, right?
It's I always so many people that I've worked with and whatnot, you kind of see them and it's like, okay, I understand why they're like that, because those kind of problems you take home with you, right? Like we've all had those kind of cars that just like keep us up at night, or
I'm glad it's not just me, man.
I have, it's like, if I have to come in, it's a mental thing. If I have to come in that same car is there 3 mornings in a row, it starts to really mess my head up, right? Because it can be even the same car there for a whole bunch of different work, just not one problem. But I don't know how some of these guys can do it where they have these cars, multiple problem cars in the shop, and they kind of navigate through the different cars and whatnot, and they're sitting there and this is waiting for this and this is waiting for that, and they go back to that. I could never sleep, Oscar. I'd be 500 pounds from stress eating, and I'd have even worse circles under my eyes because I would not sleep. I would be so. I can remember those cars from my career way back in the dealership days, where it's like, what is wrong with that stupid car? And your phone and tech line, and that was the beauty of dealerships, was that you had known good cars, so you could go and look at the data. You could go and look. It was, you had a parts right in the bay next to you. Sometimes you're just known good parts. And that all works when it doesn't work, right? But when you're trying to get intermittent stuff to happen or trying to track down that thing that the customer says it does, many nights I lost of sleep trying to, how do I duplicate that? How do I explain? Sometimes it's just, how do I explain it, right? It's the communication breakdown of, so I've always felt more data is good. When people start to say, oh, I can't, the scan tools are doing too much, it's given me too much. Yeah, I want some very basic PIDs, right, that I'm always going to look at. But the more it can give me, the more codes it can give me, man, that helps so much more, right? It opens up, it streamlines my process so much faster, and I don't know how guys do it. I do not know. I've touched a few OBD1 cars in my day, and that was a different thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was your fundamentals, but it was rudimentary. But even then, you're looking at it going, this doesn't make sense. There's no way it even made sense to the engineer. And then they're like, well, it kind of did, but their hands were tied. You know what I mean? Like everything was so new and in its infancy that, they were working with what they had to work with. And now we look at it and go, oh, we're so spoiled. Like it's, what, you don't have, topography of all the modules, like,
Give me a
right?
break.
Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh yeah.
it's fascinating, and that's what I think is when I look for people that I align with or I gel with in a shop, or in the culture at all, I look for those people that like really get it, that have
Yeah.
been and seen some of the old stuff and know how the progression happened. And that's key. That's then you can appreciate what you have. Yeah, you still get stressed out by it for sure. But
Absolutely.
I live for the challenges, right? I get bored on just putting a steering rack in, or I get bored on just putting
Yeah.
a control arm in, or putting brakes on, or doing tires. I do a lot of that work still, but it's just boring. It's
Yeah.
hard to get fired up about it. But give me that car that's got a miss, or you know down on power, or no codes or something, then I'm just like the wheels start grinding and turning, and you're like, oh, this is why I got into this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the crazy part is you could still turn back to your old school fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many cars that we've diagnosed with a vacuum gauge, and
Yes,
a propane enrichment tool. And so it didn't die. They're still there. And
that
when
was one
people
of the
say,
first
no,
videos. That was one of the first
but
videos of yours that I ever watched. Was one of the, like, when you pull the vacuum gauge out, and I mean, I was just like, see, this guy gets it. He's showing how, because I mean, yeah, all the other stuff is great. Pressure transducers, pulse sensors, all
yeah,
that is fantastic. But I mean, if we can take a $6 tool out of the drawer and we can show the same result of a
yep,
diagnostic process, man, that is so much less intimidating to people, especially when they're starting out. I don't always need to have every piece of information. I just need to have the important piece of information that says, yes, for sure,
right,
this is not going to be fixed with a spark plug wire, or an injector, or something. Like, it is, you've got a burnt valve,
yeah,
how do we proceed from this? Like, so that's great. Okay, you don't want to fix the car, cool, my diag is done. It's fascinating to know, okay, I can go in further, and I can tell you what cylinder it's on. But I mean, if it's a car on its last legs, and they just want to know that they're not going to waste money on a tune up, heck, give me that tool, give it to me
yeah,
fast. Like, I love that. I thought that was so cool when you put that video up. I'm like, ah, yes. And it's because you'll see people that are not necessarily, when you go onto YouTube and down the rabbit holes and stuff, it'll be somebody that's not necessarily an industry professional, and they're showing how they do it, right? And it
right,
might be like, oh, I'm dialing a carburetor screws up when I'm using a vacuum gauge. That's all cool and stuff. But what you want to see is somebody that always has a, okay, but he's not a pro attached to it, right? Which we don't.
right,
Sometimes we make that assumption. When it's
right,
somebody like yourself, that it's like, okay, he is a automotive instructor teaching this for free to people out there on YouTube. It comes with a little bit more um, credibility, I guess, is what I'm trying
right.
to say. And I saw that video, and I was like, that's awesome. That's cool.
Thanks, man.
No, I mean, because it's you start at the basics, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's so important, so important. I
yeah. I still teach that in my AA class. Teach them how many inches of vacuum do you have while the engine's cranking. If you see zero, you have a timing chain or timing belt that went out. I remember that from the old Kias. Like we used to see the Kias Rios and what was it, Sophias or something like that, come in on a tow truck and go grab the vacuum gauge, unplug IAC, plug in the gauge, crank it 0 inches. This thing needs an engine. Don't even drop it. So little stuff like that was
yeah.
quick and easy, and it still works today. That's why pressure transducers work, because if it's basically a digital representation of a vacuum gauge. So it all goes back to the fundamentals.
I've had so many coworkers I've watched burn their hands trying to take out an oxygen sensor to thread in a bung to check back pressure, and it's like, why don't you just put a vacuum gauge on it and see if it build positive pressure in the intake? I don't have to fart around with getting that O2 out or tapping a hole in the exhaust. There's my proof right there. I don't have to touch
Yeah,
anything, right? Like, I can
right.
save some time. I don't have to, because you know how that's going to go. You take that oxygen sensor out, the threads are going to come with it, and
Come with it.
yeah, you end up having to sell them an oxygen sensor just to say, okay, yes, for sure, your cat's plugged and your O2's bad. And they're like, oh, I'm getting rid of the car. Well, now at least you got to put an oxygen sensor in it just to go get rid of the car. Like, nobody wants that.
Yeah,
If we can do it fast and we can do it simple, that's always going to be my attack. I'm not a
Same here.
I'm not a scope guru, so it's like, anything that I can revert back to the basics, to the old stuff, the stuff that I learned on, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, same here. That's what I always tell the students is if it's hard, you're not going to do it.
Mhm.
So we got to find the easy way to do this. So this way you can get it done. If not, you're going to revert to the parts canon. And that's why most of these guys end up in that situation.
Yeah, I want to say, Oscar, it's getting better. I think with the way the internet and people talking and stuff, I think we're seeing kind of a resurgence, not a resurgence, but an uprising of a lot of people that are just like, no, I want to spend the time to know what's wrong. I
Yeah.
don't want to just load the Identifix parts can at it and go. I'm seriously seeing, from when I started the network with so many people years ago to now, I'm seeing more people that are just like, no, I don't want to be that way, right? I want to diagnose and fix this car. I mean,
Yeah.
we all know our pattern failures, and we all, like, make money on them and rely on them and try not to overcomplicate the situation by, ignoring it, right? That
Right.
can get you down a wormhole just as bad. But our friend Paul Danner, right? Was so much of what he says is, don't be a parts changer. Don't. It's starting to resonate with people, and I'm starting to see it. And I mean, we're so
Yeah.
thankful to have guys like you and guys like him that are out there showing people, no, man, you don't have to do it the way it was always done. Here is the
Yeah.
the way to do it. I think that is, we talk all the time about change in the industry, right? And there's so many, I don't want to call them problems, but there's so many challenges to this industry. What makes it, what is beautiful about it is the struggle. You have to
Yeah.
embrace that grind, right?
Yeah.
But I want us to be able to say, you know, uh, to entice people into it. I want to be, brutally honest and say, yes, it is going to, you're going to make a lot of investment in tools. You're going to make a lot of investment in training. You're going to spend a
Right.
lot of time that you might not be paid for learning and developing. But you
Right.
can, the rewards will offset that. And I think social media has been a wonderful thing. And,
It
because it
really has.
puts people out there, right? Like that I didn't know who you were a year ago, Oscar. I had no clue. No clue. Now we're sitting here
Yeah.
talking about such an important thing to both of us, right? Of people
Right, man.
learning and the industry. I mean, yeah, it's powerful stuff. Like it's life changing. I mean, my first destination event was ASTE, and I'd never been to
So
any.
was mine.
Yeah, and I'd never been to anything like that in my life. So to see all these people that I had read their articles in trade magazines, and I had seen them online and all this kind of stuff, was like, it was like walking on clouds. It was like, it was amazing. It's I think everybody should, at some point, should make
Yes.
one of those trips. It's, yes,
Yes.
they're expensive, and yes, it's, but I think everybody should, just for what it does to your passion, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's, you came up, was it last month you came up all the way up to New York? You met my friend.
Yeah, man. That was a crazy week. So I had just gotten back from a family vacation with my in-laws Monday night. Excuse me, Tuesday. Wednesday morning, I hop on a flight to Dallas, Fort Worth to meet a good friend of mine, John Firm, and Jeff Buckley. And
Yes.
then Friday morning, I was scheduled to fly back home. But Thursday night, I get a phone call from a good friend, Mr. G. Trulia.
Yes.
And he says, "Hey, what are you doing?" First, I was struck, man. Like, oh, crap. The G. Trulia is calling me. And so he's like, "Hey, see you here in TST. So get on the phone, and I got a flight. Instead of coming back to California, I hopped on an airplane to New York and attended TST. Flew back home, got here about Sunday around midnight, and then got back to work on Monday. So it was super crazy. But
I confirmed it with my friend Brian that you traveled the farthest to go to that event. You won the
yeah,
award. Yeah, that was. Is he not a great guy or what? Eh, Brian
nah,
is.
he's he's hilarious,
Oh,
bro. Brian's hilarious.
I tell.
Him, Dutch together are
Oh,
Oh man, I had a blast with these guys at ETI. It was amazing.
TED
Yeah, I
Talks have nothing on Dutch, eh? Nothing on Dutch. TED Talks, there's nothing. Dutch is who you want to. I think he's going to replace Tucker Carlson. I really do. Like you think,
oh shit! All right.
he just
Oh man,
Dutch is a guy that I remember seeing his name way back in IETN before I was on Facebook, and I got to meet him at ASTE, and I was like, I'm that guy that did that podcast for ASOG where you know I said everything was screwed and messed up and all that kind of stuff, and he just shook my hand. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, I know who you are now, and it was like. Because to me, I had met somebody like that I had a ton of respect for how smart he I'd always been way back when. You know what I mean?
right?
For how he thought about the business,
Yeah,
and to meet him was so cool. And I mean, Brian, I had never met until I got to ASTE. We had talked for years.
really.
I mean, yeah, like we talk. Brian and I talk every day, and I mean, we would. There's been so many conversations we've had, and because it's just a sounding board. He'll be frustrated with something. He'll message me, and he'll leave this voice rant, and then I'll message him back, and I'll leave a voice rant, and he's like, "You can't believe what I'm doing today. It's so screwed up," and blah blah. It just goes on, and it's so helped us through some really difficult days. Not even just about
Right,
the job stuff, right? It can be the stuff going on away from work. I'm
right.
so thankful to have him in my life. So thankful. And then when I got to meet Paul at AST, that was so cool. Like, because I mean, Paul is one of the. I mean, he's our celebrity, right? He's our celebrity in the industry. I mean, they're
Oh yeah,
all guys are, but he is the one that is like seems to bridge everybody together in terms of like, because there's some guys that like they know you're somebody in the industry, but they're like, how do I know him again? How do I know him? Right. Paul
right.
is everybody knows Paul. Everybody knows of Paul.
Oh
And
yeah.
and I see that with Super Mario. He's headed the same way.
Yep.
Everybody knows who Super Mario is. Mario is just like, and it, for for a young man, it's scary how smart that kid is. Like it
Oh
is,
yeah.
no,
Yeah,
it's
yeah. And he's so humble, man. I got to
oh,
meet him at ASTE the first time. Comes up to me, "What's up, man?" I'm like, "Oh crap, shit!" Like, "Hey, what's up, bro?" I like froze, but he is so humble, super cool, and smart. That kid, my respects, man.
yeah, he's got it figured out. I mean, uh, I'm so I'm interested to see where he goes in this because he talks about his back gives him some issues sometimes, right? So it's like he wants to, and oh, if he gets into teaching, I mean,
He should.
yeah,
He really should.
imagine what that would be like. I mean, not running down you at all, right? It's just think of the powerhouse now that we would have with this
Yeah.
industry and how we because there's a guy that started young, started a YouTube channel, and then goes into education. We all kind of know Paul's story. Paul is used the YouTube channel just to make videos for his class. It's just a way to download them so they could. If we see that, if I to live through that in the industry where I could see that evolution, man, that'd be something to see. That's
Yeah, man.
cool. I mean, and I think if Mario, I don't know if he'll listen. Hope he does. Um, if he hasn't thought about it, I'm sure he probably has. He needs to think about it because I mean,
Yeah. Oh
he's
yeah. Yeah. His knowledge level and his skill set, man, is very sought after. And like I said, just the way the person he is, he'll freaking just knock it out, man.
such a good
So
attitude. Such a good attitude.
yeah,
You know,
if he is listening, he should really get into education.
yeah, I think he'd be a natural at it. Just like because it's he even when you watch how his videos, um, he takes some of the most advanced cars and breaks it down into just the basic stuff again, right?
Yeah,
Which is all it really all is about. You know what I mean? It's don't look at the emblem on the front of the car, just look at the circuit that you're trying to fix, and
exactly.
he does that so well. I mean, all of you guys, you do it, everybody does it so well, but yeah, it was just, it was a thrill to meet him and so many guys at AST. It really was. And it, if it wasn't for AST, I wouldn't be sitting here right now doing this, right? I would not be. So,
Nice.
it's, it changed my trajectory on where it doesn't necessarily change where I see myself going, but it definitely fires me up to go to work and live through the grind
Yeah,
and push myself. Like, I'm not a young man, to push myself to continue to constantly improve. We can all
exactly.
fall back on our laurels, and it goes back to pattern failure. We can kind of do the job through a pattern failure type attitude, right? I can go up and I can do my hours, and I can fix the cars that I want to fix, and I can
Right.
say I don't want to touch that because I'm old. And but when we think about, the technology has never once stopped, and it's not going to stop. And so I think at this point, if there's any mechanics technicians listening and they've got that attitude that well, I don't want to learn anymore, I just want to work, and I want to fix cars, take some training, watch some
Yep.
videos. If go to an event where you sit down with these people, because it will invigorate you. It'll fire you back up to be like, okay, it's just 10 more percent, 10%. If I can make myself 10% better,
Yeah.
you know, that's all it takes. It's,
Yep.
you know, it's so, that's what's powerful, and that's what's going to change this industry for us. That's how we sell this to the young people getting in. Is it's not going to be about the money, because yeah, you make a good living. There's no doubt about it. I've made an okay living doing this. I had to work really hard for it, and sometimes we get wrapped
Right.
up in well, I could have made just as much money doing, hanging drywall, or being a roofer for, in a nice climate, 12 months of the year. Right up here, you can only really roof for 7 months, and then you're going to get blown off the roof. The wind's going to, snow's going to fall. But
Yeah.
you know, but you wouldn't have you wouldn't have that memory bank full of inspiring things, or things that kicked your butt, that
Yeah.
taught you those lessons, right? You wouldn't have that. And I mean, you can't put a price on that. You can't put it in just a little box and sell it to people. You have to get out there and show the people, tell them the stories of, this was my aha moment. This was my light bulb moment.
Exactly. Exactly. I always tell people, learn from my failures so you don't do the same.
Yes.
I already lived them. I have an answer for you. Use it. If you don't, that's fine. But
Mhm.
you'll find out the hard way that that's exactly what you should not have done.
And that's
So
life
yeah.
lessons, right? We take that, even if it's got nothing to do with this industry at all. That's just an
Right.
important life lesson, right? Always go around with eyes open and ears open, mouth shut a lot more of the time. Watching where people have gone down the wrong road, or we talk about that, and sometimes we forget it because we go, oh, that tech failed to fix that because he went down the wrong road. Cool. But bring that back around to all of life, and see how, learn from other people's, where they stepped off the path, and things, it took them a long time to come back, if it ever.
Right.
Just watch the signs.
Yeah.
It's, I think that's so key. If we can keep it to that basic fundamentals, we all become easier. We learn better. But
Yeah.
what do you want to see change in the industry?
I want to see a lot of the older, not older guys, but the more experienced guys take an apprentice under your wing, show them the right way of doing things.
Mm,
And that's going to help us start changing the industry one tech at a time. I get it. We're in the automotive industry. We prank. We do a lot of dumb things we shouldn't be doing. Um, Keep that to a minimum. This way, we can keep those guys engaged, and don't make them come as an apprentice to clean after you, do all this. No,
yeah.
have them there as an apprentice and show them. Be a good mentor to these kids. And I foresee that we can change this trajectory that we're having all these people leave and nobody coming in. We could change that if we change the way that we treat them.
Mhm.
I came in that era where you were treated like the shop mop. Um, and I was able to push through it because my mentor was there giving me these, setting goals with me, and then saying, all right, here's what we got to do. Once you hit that, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. And throughout the whole process, he was there pushing me. He would give me homework. I would
Mm,
have to test stuff, bring him waveforms. So be that mentor. When after my mentor told me is pay it forward, and
yes.
that's what I'm doing now. And anybody who's willing to listen to me, I'm here to do that. And if you guys could do the same, especially if you have that level of experience, that's gonna help help that apprentice move up to the next step.
Mhm.
Help him set goals that's going to help him move up to the next step. Once he gets there, already have a plan of what you're going to do to move him up to the next one. And I feel that we can really turn this around as long as we could do that. That's one of my personal beliefs.
It's sometimes you'll have some resentment, I think, for the person that's giving you the challenges and the homework. As you said, like having, go home and look at like, I've never had that much involvement. I've always shown them little things as we've been working and say, okay, here's a better way to do this, or here's a faster way to do that, right? But I've never had to, I've gone as far as to say, okay, so here's some training that I've taken for free online. You're free to, you can find it too.
Okay. Yeah.
But I've never, it's always, I think it's sometimes it's, you catch them too late. You catch them when it's already like their trajectory they've decided is, okay, I'm here to make money. I'm here to,
Yeah.
I do transmissions, or I do, engine repair, and I'm not going to really think outside of my little bubble. Right. And, that's when you mention specializing, um, that's something that it's weird, right? Because I think in a lot of ways, shops should be specialized in the sense of, you know, finding what their that niche, and
Right.
really working with it, and developing it and building it. Because I think too many times, you know how it goes. Sometimes we take on cars that we shouldn't touch, or
Right.
the pride gets in the way, and we take those challenges and those ego cars, those problem cars, and those nightmare cars. And it's that alpha male thing. It's like, I can fix anything, I can do anything. Yes, you can.
2 weeks later.
That's right. And it's like, okay, so I had 24 hours into this car, and I'm going to get 6 hours labor. Like, yes, there is value to that. The learning and the education that you took from that, but it can't be a every week thing. You know what I mean? You
Right.
have maybe one a year, two a year, and then the rest of it should go nice and smooth so that you can make money, be efficient.
Yeah, exactly.
um, you know, we have to learn in this industry to know when to say no. I'm very good at it. I know just enough. I say all the time, I know just enough to fool people, and I know just enough to, when it gets tough, I can get to the end of it. But man, it's an ugly road sometimes to watch me how I do it, because it's just like it looks like a chicken running around with his head cut off. But I mean, there's a method to it. That's just,
Right.
I don't want anybody to say that's how I want to do it. No, no, young grasshopper, you want to do it much better than me. You want to like have a much more defined process, and
Right.
and way of doing it. I have a really good intuition. I have a lot of experience, and I'm one of those that I just trust myself too much. I trust my instincts, right? And that's an important thing, and I don't think you can teach it. But I always want people to, you know go through the steps, not always the way I do it. So, and
Right.
I think it's one of those, we have to recognize that no two people learn the same, and no two people,
Right.
and we have to develop that, where it's like, I don't want to haze them when they come in anymore. I got hazed bad when I came in, and I had a lot of people look at me and go, "Are you sure this is what you want to do for a living?" Like, because I'm not, if I'm a guy that, like, if you were to take a carburetor apart and throw all the pieces on the bench and say put that back together, I'd be like, like, I know how it's supposed to work, but I got to be like meticulous about how I take it apart, put it back together, because I don't have that photographic memory of, I can remember how every little nuance of it, and this, and I'm not strong at that. But
Right.
if you give me a wiring diagram or a schematic or a blueprint or something, go, read that for me, no problem. So we
Yeah.
have to stop hazing them for trying to make them into something that they're not strong. And I think we need to learn how to identify what they're really passionate about and what they're really good
Right.
at, and hope that those two things mesh for them, because we've all seen those young people that they really want to be into drivability or electrical, but it's just, it doesn't click for them. It doesn't click for them. It doesn't click for them. And it's like, okay, so is there a place for you? Yes, there is, but it may be not doing drivability and electrical. It might be,
Right.
That it's more of a, front end, nuts and bolts type of thing. Maybe you're put them into transmissions, that kind of thing. Like, do you understand it? Oh yeah. Okay, cool. I think that's the whole thing, is we need to stop hazing them and just say, this is what I need. When I hired you, you're not it. Good luck in the future. I'm going to go find somebody else. And I think we need to start looking at, like, how do I make that person be the best fit in my shop that they can be. Right. And then, as I mean, the other thing is, it's the thing we don't talk about in this industry is that all these people that they say, oh, I can't find a tech. I can't find a tech. I can't find a tech. For everyone that you hear that, if you want to look at some of the comments and some of the other feeds, there are tons of people that talk about, this is why I got out of the industry, or this is why I started as an automotive apprentice and then I jumped to a different trade. And a lot of it is because they were hazed, right? It's not, we say, oh, the tool debt is astronomical. It is, but there's more and more shops I know that are helping the young people out with a starter tool set, right? Like Charles Hummel Mechanic got heavily involved with that. Paul Danner as well. So I don't think it's always a tool debt. I think it's when they come in and we haze them, make them, like you said, they're dedicated almost like a janitor instead of actually being an apprentice and learning how this stuff is supposed to work. We don't mentor them properly. And then it's like, yeah, so you wanted a guy that was going to be strong at electrical and drivability. This young person is not that, but you need a person in the shop. Help that person survive it. Help that person flourish. Help that person, get excited about what it is they do. Reward them. Show them. Show appreciation. It's not about money, right? It's, if they do a fantastic job, tell them they do a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Don't sit there and dwell on, I still need this. Use what you have. Everybody wants a drivability electrical tech. We know that not everybody is strong at that, and not everyone out there is going to be one, and that's okay. But when you have one, look after them. The people that come in their place that don't immediately kick them to the door. Figure out how your shop can still flourish, can still give them training, for God's sakes. That's the other thing, right? We don't talk about that. Like, there's so many more shops and so many more shop owners that need to really understand that you can get some amazing training online. Fantastic training.
Oh yeah.
Right. But it's not, it should supplement. I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine last night. That should be a supplement to, a CTI type of, program, or a program like yours or something like that, where guys are getting consistent training. That's what they need. It should be part of the shop's culture. It shouldn't be just like, okay, if you want to get better, you go home and you apply yourself at night. No, if it's like 2 hours a week, you sit down on a Friday afternoon, you take a 2-hour lunch and you throw a training video in, and you kind of feed the people and you kind of show them, the process. This is how Oscar does it, or this is how Paul does it, or this is how Brandon Steckler does it. If you start to show them that, get them enthused about it.
Right.
Then we start to build up that resource that we have available to us. We get people fired up about it, because there's some, I think, that, they always thought it was beyond them to be able to actually do diag. And I think once they learn a few steps, it's like they get a little more confidence, I'm sure you've seen that probably more than most of us ever will, right? You ever had
I see it all the time. I actually have one right now who came into my class, and he said, I'm here because I'm a partner in a shop, but electrical's never been my thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And right now, actually yesterday, he has personal car on the way to school, got a check engine light, PO 303.
Yeah.
And so we pulled it into the classroom or the lab yesterday, and by the time I turned around, he had his scope out, paddle probe connected, and getting ready to test for ignition setup. And I went over there and tapped him on the shoulder. I was like, I thought you didn't like electrical.
Yeah.
And then he gave me the biggest smile, and he's like, it's because I understand it now. So it's one of those things where just because you don't like it doesn't mean you can't be good at it. As long as you can get the proper training, you can.
Yeah. That'd be so. That makes you a rich man, eh, Oscar? When you think about it, right?
Oh yeah, that's why I love what I do.
It's just, oh yeah. I'm getting chills just hearing that because it's, I remember my own moments like that, right? I talk about them, but to be able to see it happen on the, not on the daily, but like, a couple times a year.
Yeah,
Oh, that'd be so rewarding, man. So rewarding. I can understand how the guys, the educators, get the bitten by the bug, right? When even outside of a school setting, I'm talking like the professionals in the industry that go around. I mean, I'm sure that must be, because you think about the hours that they log, the air miles that they amass and stuff traveling around,
right.
and teaching all these people and strangers and everything else. But it must be, there must be one in every classroom that just comes out of there with a handshake and a renewed vigor. That's, they walk a little taller, and yeah, that would make it worthwhile for sure. Yeah.
It definitely is, man. It definitely is. Yeah, you just see him, and you're like, yeah, I know that guy's gonna do something.
So how, like, you obviously have seen a lot have succeeded, right? After you've kind of, wow, that's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Well, I have a couple in particular that have like really exceeded, um, and two of them actually teach for me now. Um, so one thing that we do here at the school is we'd rather develop instructors, because then this gives us the opportunity again to pay back to the industry,
Mhm.
because these guys are came to us as students, mastered their craft, got all that experience, and then now we're allowing them to feed their experience to the new generation as well. So that's a proud moment for me as well when I see them go through my program as a student, come back 4 or 5 years later, and then now they're teaching a class for me. So it's
Yeah,
really rewarding on both ends.
yeah. I mean, it's so cool, so cool. Even just to see one open a shop. I know Paul's talked about he's had a couple of his students graduate, right, and open successful shops, and start to really change what they're doing and how they're doing it and how they're perceived in the industry. I mean, that's, yeah, powerful stuff, man. Really cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's so rewarding just with that.
Yeah. So what do you see, an expansion for you, or what, like, how, if you could make it as big as you wanted to make it, how big would you make it?
Nationwide. um, yeah, right now we actually just opened up. We're doing we're doing a class out in Northern California. We're basically looking for shops that would rent us out the shop for a fee. We'll come out, do a class, and they just pretty much host it. So this way we can kind of get to more areas. And I'm also working on doing some online stuff, just to be able to help out. One of the cool parts of coming from immigrant parents is I speak two languages, so also
Mm,
speak Spanish, and that's helping quite a bit. We've been able to make a good impact in the Spanish community, where they had very little to zero training, and what training was available was so outdated that it wasn't benefiting anybody. So we've been able to also get into the Spanish market. I'll be presenting a class at Automecanica from Frankfurt in City of Mexico,
okay, cool.
in July. So then last year I was able to do two trainings out there on 5 gas analysis in March and in July as well. So we're seeing a little bit of growth out into the Spanish speaking market, and we would love to be able to, either through Zoom or in person, get out to more shops out in the East Coast and Midwest and help out as best as we can, because that's just what we do. I love what I do, and if I can give you that one golden nugget that you could take away that just catapults your career, then it was worth it for me.
That's awesome, Oscar, honestly, because I mean, yeah, like it's so, we sometimes forget about that, like with the obstacles that somebody might have with language, right? And
Right.
have that aptitude and that ability. But like, I don't even think about that from my standpoint, right? Because it's just, what is it, 99% of everything is done in English, and like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's always been available to me, and it's, I don't appreciate that. And I mean, it's I don't want to say that it's an untapped market, but I mean, it is kind of some place that, yes, you can really make some change, by
Right.
by being able to do that. And it's only to your advantage. I speak English, and I speak a very little bit of French, because in Canada you have to learn some French, and but no Spanish at all. Spanish, we don't even teach Spanish up here. It's
Really?
No, there's not a whole lot of Latin Americans or Latin people in Canada. I think it's just too cold, Oscar. I really think it's just.
Yeah. That would definitely drive them away.
Yeah. If I mean, I tell everybody you should come up here and see it. It's a beautiful country, but don't come after November. Don't come after November. It's, unless you like snow. Brian's one of those guys. He likes snow. He gets a snow machine, and But I tell everybody, if you're going to come to Canada, come like, when it's nice, because it's a beautiful country, and and everybody should see it. But it's, don't come in the wintertime unless you've been through a winter somewhere else, because once you get up here, it's a little different. Like, try out Minnesota first or something like that. Once you come up here, it's different. So,
Okay.
yeah. Anyway, Oscar, I want to thank you, man. Honestly, it's been a pleasure.
Jeff, thank you for having me, bud.
It's been a pleasure to get to know you. And I mean, like, the goal is to go back to AST or get to another event next year, and finally get to meet you in person.
Yeah, man. Hell yeah.
I know you want to meet Paul real bad, so we gotta work on Paul to show up, because he likes the events, but it gets overwhelming for him when he's walking around and there's thousands of people that want to shake his hand, and
I bet, man. I bet.
But I mean, that's going to be you too in a couple of years, Oscar, for sure. I feel the same way. I think it's going to be like, you're going to see Oscar and Mario and Paul Danner walking around, and it's going to be like security detail, right? It's going to be people flogging.
Oh man, that'd be awesome. I would love that.